Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of a review of what we've learned in PHP to date. I've got an appointment form set up here, and we're going to first look at the simple use cases. So we're going to look at how we can capture data that was sent from a text box, or in this case, a date box, which is just a text box that's wrapped in some extra functionality. In a text area, which is also like a text box with radio buttons. We'll look at the checkboxes and select types as well, but I think in a second video. Now we've seen all this stuff in class, so I'm just going to go through it really quickly as a reminder of the things that we need to remember. First things first, this is an HTML file, index.html. If I change the name to index.php, this is also a valid HTML file. It's still entirely HTML. We just haven't written any PHP proper into it. And that's how PHP works. I can write PHP at any time just by opening a PHP tag and closing it and filling it in with any code, PHP code that I want. Now I can put this here. I'm not limited to using one tag. I can also put that tag here at the top of my body tag, here at the bottom of my body tag, and here after all the rest of my code is gone. Now typically you're not going to do something so sporadic. You would usually be a little bit more strategic as to where you're going to put these things, but PHP code is generally used on the web to output HTML files. So it'll process user input, it will do something with it, usually interacting with a database on the back end, which we're going to be learning in a couple of weeks. And then it will spit out some new HTML to the person who submitted to it, so the user, the client, whatever you want to call it, so that the client can see that something has been done. So I'm just using a simple appointment form, and I'm not actually submitting anywhere right now because my action is blank. If I click the submit button, you'll see that it just automatically submits back to me. You'll also notice that in my address bar, I've got what's called a query string, which it starts with a question mark and then has key equals value separated by ampersands. If there's no value, then you just get emptiness between the equal sign and the ampersand. If I were to put spaces in the title and submit, you can see that I get plus plus plus. That's just the way that HTTP represents these things. We're not really overly concerned with the representation up here. We're just going to be aware that anything that we type in our form is going to be put up in that space. So for the sake of argument, we're going to pretend that this appointment data is private data, and if somebody's entering something on their screen, they don't necessarily want somebody looking over their shoulder after they've submitted and seeing all this information in their address bar. In which case, we need to change the method that the form uses to submit data. So there's two methods. Method A is get, and that's the default and what we were just using. So you don't necessarily need to explicitly say that you want to use the get method. Method B is post. And post does exactly the same thing, only that that information is submitted invisibly. So I've just saved it. Whenever you see the little dot disappear, so I'm going to press tab. You can see the little dots up here in my Visual Studio Code window. When I press Control S to save it, that goes away. Now I'm going to go back to before I ever submitted a form. You can see nothing's there. I'll refresh. Okay. If I click Save Appointment Now, you'll see that the title bar kind of flickered a little bit for a moment, and then there's nothing there. But I don't really see my data, so let's have a moment here. PHP, all right, and I'm going to say echo, or actually not echo, let's do print r post. Now post is that global variable that's available to us if our user has posted their form or sent their form using the post method. If I use the get method, I would have to do underscore get. So I'm going to refresh. And because this was a post submission, it's going to ask me to confirm that I want to resubmit so that the user doesn't accidentally, for example, resubmit credit card data. I click continue. This is a good thing. And then now I can see the information that I submitted in PHP's output representation. Notice that it's all on one line. It'll probably be a little bit jumbled, but if I go view source, so this is my um, my Chrome browser. So I have a view page source in my right-click menu. I go there, and you can see that it's actually output in a little bit of a nicer format. So if you really are having trouble reading this when it gets all jumbled together, make sure to view source. You can see it a little bit easier. Okay, so we can see that I'm actually submitting data to my form itself. Now I'm going to go to that page again, and you'll see that the array is empty. That's because I came to it and there's no actual post data. So post is just an empty array by default. So you can actually do if empty post, then we're going to echo no form data submitted, else echo thank you for submitting your appointment. No form data submitted, you see? So that's where empty comes into play. Empty can tell you whether or not you have post or get data. Then I've got a way of saying thank you for submitting it. Well, let's put here maybe a print R post. All right. Now print R is just built-in information or a built-in function for quickly outputting data. Typically, it's only used for debugging purposes, and you're not really going to output this to your end product, but you can see it at work right now. It's a little bit ugly because it's not surrounded by HTML, and HTML hasn't done anything to make it look nice. We're not going to use it that way anyway, so not a big deal. Also, I don't have to submit to the current page. And typically you're going to want to avoid doing that unless you want to make this an edit page so that when after you have submitted, the user has an opportunity to edit. And for the time being, we're going to skip over that step. So in my folders, in my folder area, I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to call it server. All right, so that's my server scripts, and I'm going to create a new file in there, and I'll just call it submit.php. All right, and this is going to be where I actually process my data for this project. So I'm going to take this if stuff out of here, I'm going to put it into my submit file. I'm going to save that. I'll get rid of this PHP tag because I don't have any code in there. I'll save it, and when I refresh here, you'll notice that that stuff at the top disappears, but I still, when I click the save appointment button, it's submitting to the current page. So what I need to do is change this action to submit to the correct page. I'm going to go to server/submit.php. So I'm in index and I want to go to server, which is right beside me, so I don't put any special characters before it. See if I fold that up, it's in the same directory. Then I'm going to go to submit within that directory. So now I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go back to here by just pressing space and enter. Now when I reload, I don't get any of the continue messages because I'm not submitting to this page. When I click save appointment, everything gets sent to this server/submit.php page. So I'm going to go back. Right. You'll also notice that our page name is not in the address bar. That's because Apache server, which is what we're using on XAMPP here, finds index.php, index.html, and a couple of other potential candidates that use the word index or default. And if there is any of those files in the directory, they are the default file to load when you go there. Okay, so let's put in some dates here and go to the doctor. I don't even know, leg hurts. And then we'll go type, and look, I've got a doctor's appointment. repeat, never, hopefully, and give me a notification 2 hours before so I don't forget. All right, so we're just going to use this as some sample data. I'm going to click Save Appointment. All right, and I've got thank you for submitting your appointment, and in my array I've got a bunch of stuff. All right. You'll notice that my repeat stuff doesn't appear to be here. That's because I haven't actually taken my notifications or my repeat and given them names to give us an opportunity to talk about some things that are very specific to radio buttons and checkboxes. Number one, radio buttons. If you're going to pick one of them, so if we look back at our form, we're going to pick either never, daily, weekly, or monthly. Right? Notice that when I check them, they all got checked off. But the way radio buttons work, I want one of those four, not all of those four. So what I do is I give them all the same name. So I'm going to call these ones repeat. Repeat. Now if I refresh and I click on either of these, you'll see that HTML now knows they belong together. They have the same name, and I only want to send one value for that name. What gets sent for them is not the words never, daily, weekly, or monthly. These are just labels that we've put into our HTML to make them look a little bit nicer. What will be sent is these one character codes that I've set up for each of them. So X for never, D for daily, W for weekly, and M for monthly. So that's what will be sent to our server. And I will actually demonstrate that. So I've selected weekly. I should get a W for my repeat. So repeat W. Now we're still not getting information from these combo boxes or the checkboxes. So I'm going to have a look there. You see I've got nothing there. If I look at my checkboxes, I want to give them all the same name too. So notify. And I will multi-select this time and paste. Okay, I'm back. My wireless mouse just decided to give out on me, so sorry about that. What I was saying was if I refreshed over here, you see I still don't get the checkboxes, but that's because I did not yet have names for my checkboxes, right? I've given them all the name notify now, so I'm going to refresh that page and that will allow them to have names. So if I view page source, you can see now they have the name notify. Right? When I submit that now, I will have a notify that says 6 on it. I have one notify, it says 6. I go back, I have 5 checkboxes selected, and I've only got one piece of information. Look, it has 24 now that I've added those checkboxes to it. You can see I've got 1, 2, 6, 12, and 24. 24 is the last thing that I checked. Now, depending on your browser, you will either get notify equals something several times, or you'll get the last one sent to your server. If you want to get all of them sent to your PHP server, you have to add in just a little bit of extra syntax in your name of your checkbox, and that is to put these little square brackets inside of your name. So it would be notify with an open and closed square bracket for each of the checkboxes that belong in this array of potential values that you can select. So now I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back and refresh, and all of our data should be now submitted. I want all 3 of those reminders. When I save appointment, you can see this. I'll put it in view page source mode so you can have a look a little bit closer. So my array has an appointment date that I entered in year, month, day format. I have a title for my appointment, some details, which are just gobbledygook right now. I have a type which just says 3, and if I have a look, that means that I've picked a doctor's appointment. I have a repeat of no repeat, never repeat, that's what the X represents. And then my notify itself is an array of 3 items, and the values are 1, 2, and 6. This 0, 1, and 2 are the indexes for those items in your array, and arrays are 0 indexed by default.